a millionaire abandoned her newborn son. 20 years later, she meets him again, and what he says leaves everyone in shock. The Grand Palm Beach Hotel's ballroom shimmered with the glow of crystal chandeliers. Evelyn Blackwood, an elegant 45-year-old woman, walked among the charity event guests, her blue silk dress gently swaying. Her presence was striking, her smile hiding secrets she had sworn never to reveal. As she approached the donation table, Evelyn noticed a stack of cards with information about some of the event participants. Her eyes casually skimmed through the papers until one name leapt out at her, Alex Johnson, a young medical student. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the card, and when she saw the names of his parents Mariana Torres and David Johnson, the world around her began to spin. Suddenly, Evelyn was no longer in the ballroom. She was Mariana again, 20 years ago, running through the dark night after leaving her home and newborn baby. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her sleeping son. "I'll come back for you, my love," she whispered, knowing deep down that she might never be able to keep that promise. The sound of worried voices brought Evelyn back to the present. She was on the floor, surrounded by anxious faces. "Someone call an ambulance," someone shouted. The world went dark again. When Evelyn opened her eyes, she was in a hospital room. Her best friend, Maggie, was holding her hand, her face full of concern. "What happened, Evelyn? You've never fainted like that before." Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 2 decades of secrets. "Maggie," she began, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." In the following minutes, Evelyn revealed everything. Her real name, Mariana Torres. The abusive marriage to David, a violent alcoholic. The baby she left behind, promising to return, a promise she never fulfilled. "I ran to save my life, Maggie," Evelyn explained, tears streaming down her face. "I met Richard, fell in love, and, each day, it became harder to go back. How could I tell the truth after so much time?" Maggie listened in silence, shocked. "And the boy on the card? Alex?" "My son," Evelyn whispered. "My Alex. He's here, in Palm Beach. After all these years." Maggie squeezed her friend's hand. "What are you going to do now?" Evelyn looked out the hospital window, her mind a storm of emotions. Fear, guilt, hope, all mixed together. "I need to know more about him, Maggie. I need to make sure he's okay." "And Richard? Are you going to tell him?" Fear flickered in Evelyn's eyes. "No, I can't. He would never understand. I need to do this in secret. At least for now." As the sun set outside the hospital window, Evelyn made her decision. She would investigate Alex, discover what kind of man her son had become. But she would have to be careful. One wrong step and the entire world she had built over the last 20 years could come crashing down. "Maggie, I need your help," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength. "No one can know about this. No one." Maggie nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'm here for you, Evelyn. Always." As night fell over Palm Beach, Evelyn began planning her next moves, unaware that her search for redemption was about to turn her life upside down. The alarm rang at 5 a.m., and Alex Johnson opened his eyes, tired but determined. At 20, his routine was a constant battle against time. He got up silently, trying not to wake his father, David, who was asleep on the couch in the small living room. Alex looked at his father with a mix of love and concern. David, a middle-aged man with sunken eyes and graying hair, had been sober for 6 months, his longest stretch of recovery so far. Alex knew that each day was a struggle for his father, and he was determined to support him. After a quick breakfast, Alex headed out for his morning run. The streets of Palm Beach were still calm, the sun just starting to paint the horizon gold. Running was his moment of peace, a brief escape from the pressures of his life. Back at the apartment, Alex found his father awake, making coffee. "Good morning, son," David smiled, his eyes tired but clear. "Ready for another day?" Alex nodded, grabbing a cup of coffee. "Always, Dad." "How are you feeling today?" "One day at a time, remember?" David replied, the mantra of Alcoholics Anonymous echoing in his voice. After saying goodbye to his father, Alex rushed off to medical school. The classes were intense, but he loved every minute of it. During lunch, he met up with his girlfriend, Sophia, in the cafeteria. Sophia, a nursing student with bright eyes and a warm smile, was Alex's rock. She hugged him tightly, sensing the tension in his shoulders. "Everything okay, love?" she asked, concerned. Alex sighed. "Just the usual. Bills, Dad, school." Sophia squeezed his hand. "We'll make it through. Together, remember?" After classes, Alex went straight to the local hospital, where he volunteered. Helping the patients, even with the simplest tasks, reminded him of why he had chosen medicine. Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn Blackwood sat in her luxurious office, browsing the internet. She had found the donation page for the hospital volunteer program where Alex worked. With her heart racing, she made a generous anonymous donation. "It's the least I can do," she murmured to herself, tears in her eyes. That evening, during dinner, Evelyn's husband, Richard, noticed her distraction. "Is everything okay, dear?" he asked, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Evelyn forced a smile. "Of course, love. Just tired from yesterday's event." Richard didn't seem convinced, but didn't press the issue. He had noticed subtle changes in Evelyn's behavior, distant looks, whispered phone conversations. Something was going on, and he was determined to find out what. Back in Alex's small apartment, he opened his email and was stunned. A notification of a substantial donation to the volunteer program blinked on the screen. "Dad," he shouted, excited. "You won't believe this." David entered the room, curious. "What is it, son?" "Someone made a huge donation to the hospital. They're going to expand the volunteer program and—" Alex hesitated, barely daring to believe they're offering scholarships for the volunteers. David hugged his son, proud. "That's amazing, Alex. You deserve this." That night, Alex could hardly sleep, his mind spinning with possibilities. With that scholarship, he could focus more on his studies, maybe even cut back on his hours at the local cafe. As Alex dreamed of a brighter future, Evelyn lay awake in her king-sized bed, thinking about the son she barely knew. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't stop. Every step closer to Alex made her feel more alive than she had in years. Across the room, Richard watched his restless wife, his mind full of suspicions. He was determined to find out what Evelyn was hiding, unaware that the truth would change their lives forever. The hospital's event hall was filled with well-dressed people, all gathered for yet another charity event. Evelyn Blackwood circulated among the guests, her practiced smile hiding the nervousness she felt. Her eyes constantly searched for Alex. Finally, she saw him. Alex was serving drinks, his volunteer uniform contrasting with the formal attire of the guests. Evelyn took a deep breath and approached him. "Hello," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You're one of the volunteers, right?" Alex smiled politely. Yes, ma'am. Can I offer you something to drink? Evelyn picked up a glass of champagne, her fingers brushing against Alex's for a moment. Thank you. It's wonderful to see young people so dedicated. Are you in college? Yes, I'm studying medicine, Alex replied, a proud sparkle in his eyes. Evelyn felt her heart tighten. Her son, a future doctor. She wanted to say so much, ask so many questions, but she held back. How admirable. Your parents must be very proud. Alex's expression shifted subtly. My dad is, yes. As for my mom, she's not around. Before Evelyn could respond, Sophia appeared at Alex's side, possessively linking her arm with his. Hi, love. Who's your new friend? Evelyn noticed the suspicious look in Sophia's eyes and stepped back slightly. Just an admirer of volunteer work. It was a pleasure meeting you both. As she walked away, Evelyn could feel Sophia's eyes burning into her back. She knew she had to be more careful. Across the room, Richard watched the interaction with growing suspicion. Over the past few days, he had noticed Evelyn making secret phone calls, rummaging through old papers. And now, she was talking to a young volunteer as if he were the most fascinating person in the world. Richard took out his phone and quickly typed a message to his private investigator, I need more information. Urgent. Meanwhile, Alex was saying goodbye to Sophia after the event. You don't need to be jealous, he teased. That lady was just being polite. Sophia frowned. I don't know, Alex. There's something off about her. The way she looked at you. Alex laughed and kissed Sophia's forehead. You're imagining things. Now, I need to go. I have an appointment with Dr. Martinez early tomorrow. The next morning, Alex sat in Dr. Martinez's office, his heart pounding as he listened to the doctor's words. Alex, we've received your test results, Dr. Martinez began, his expression serious. Unfortunately, we've discovered a rather severe hereditary heart condition. Alex felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath him. How serious, doctor? It's treatable, but we need to act quickly, the doctor explained. The most important thing now is for us to obtain a complete family medical history. This is crucial to determining the best treatment. Alex swallowed hard. But doctor, I don't know my biological mother. She abandoned us when I was a baby. Dr. Martinez nodded sympathetically. I understand that it's difficult, Alex, but it's vital that we try to gather this information. Your heart's health may depend on it. Leaving the office, Alex felt lost. He had always been curious about his mother, but he had never felt an urgent need to find her. Until now. That evening, sitting at the kitchen table with his father, Alex gathered the courage to bring up the subject. Dad, I need to ask you about my mother, he began hesitantly. David froze, the coffee cup halfway to his mouth. What do you want to know, son? Everything, Alex replied. I need to find her, Dad. It's a health matter. David looked at his son, a mix of concern and old pain in his eyes. Alex, there's so much I don't know how to tell you. She just disappeared one night. But I'll do my best to help you find her. As father and son began their search on the other side of town, Evelyn prepared for bed, unaware that her past was about to catch up with her faster than she could have imagined. Alex sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by old papers and yellowed photographs. Sophia and David sat beside him, all focused on the search for more information about Alex's past and his mother. Look, son, David said, pointing to a faded document. Here's your original birth certificate. It has more details than the copy we had at home. Alex took the paper with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the document, stopping at the mother's name field. Mariana Torres, he read aloud, confirming what he already knew but now seeing it written officially. I've always known her name, Alex said, his voice low. But seeing it here, on this official document, makes it all feel more real. Sophia gently squeezed Alex's shoulder. It's a start, love. Now we can search for more information about her. David sighed heavily. Son, I know I never talked much about your mother. After she disappeared, it was too painful. But now, seeing how important this is for you and your health, I'm ready to share what I know. Alex looked at his father, a mix of emotions on his face. Thanks, Dad. Any information could help now. In the days that followed, Alex dove headfirst into the search, now with a clearer purpose. Between classes and hospital shifts, he scoured online records, called city offices, and even hired a private investigator with his savings. The name Mariana Torres was the key he hoped would unlock the secrets of his past and possibly save his future. Meanwhile, Evelyn lived in constant anxiety. Through her connections at the hospital, she learned about Alex's heart condition and his desperate search for family medical information. One night, alone in her office, Evelyn cried silently as she looked over her own medical records. She knew the information that could help Alex, but giving it to him would mean revealing her identity. What do I do, God? She murmured to herself, her heart torn between the desire to help her son and the fear of the consequences. Deciding that Alex's health was more important than her secret, Evelyn began to plan a way to get the information to him anonymously. One afternoon, while making a large transfer of money to an account she had secretly created for Alex, Evelyn was nearly caught by Richard. "Dear, what are you doing?" Richard asked, suddenly walking into the office. Evelyn quickly closed the computer screen, her heart racing. "Nothing, love. Just some charity donations." Richard looked at her suspiciously but said nothing. After he left, Evelyn took a deep breath, realizing how close she had come to being discovered. Days later, during another charity event at the hospital, Evelyn once again tried to approach Alex. She watched him from a distance, gathering the courage to speak to him, when suddenly Sophia appeared, blocking her path. "Excuse me, but I need to talk to you," Sophia said, her voice tense. Evelyn tried to remain calm. "Of course, dear." "About what?" "About Alex," Sophia replied, her eyes flashing with determination. "I've seen how you look at him. What's your interest in him?" Evelyn felt panic rising. I just admire his volunteer work," she stammered. Sophia crossed her arms. "Don't lie to me. You've been showing up at every event where he works. You're donating large sums of money anonymously? What do you want with him?" Sophia's voice grew louder, drawing the attention of the people around them. Alex, noticing the commotion, began to approach. "Please, you don't understand," Evelyn pleaded, feeling cornered. "Then make me understand," Sophia demanded. At that moment, Alex reached them. "What's going on here?" Evelyn looked at her son, tears in her eyes, knowing she was a step away from losing everything. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. "This woman is stalking you, Alex," Sophia said, pointing at Evelyn. "She shows up everywhere, watches you. There's something wrong here." Alex looked confused, glancing between Sophia and Evelyn. "Is this true?" he asked Evelyn directly. Evelyn felt the world spinning around her. She knew this moment would change everything, but she wasn't ready for it. Not like this, not now. I just wanted to help, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex took a step toward her, his eyes full of questions. Who are you, really? Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, but before she could form the words, Richard appeared by her side, gripping her arm tightly. I think that's enough of a scene for today, dear, he said through gritted teeth, dragging Evelyn away. Alex and Sophia stood still, watching as Evelyn was pulled away, leaving behind more questions than answers. The grand hall of the Palm Beach Country Club sparkled with the light of 1,000 crystals. The local elite had gathered for yet another charity event, champagne glasses clinking and muffled laughter filling the air. Evelyn Blackwood, as elegant as ever in her green silk gown, moved among the guests, her social smile hiding the inner turmoil consuming her. Across the room, Alex entered, Sophia by his side. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Evelyn. With determined steps, he crossed the hall, ignoring the curious glances that followed him. Alex felt a strange familiarity toward Evelyn, and considering her behavior always watching him from a distance, he didn't think twice before approaching her. Mrs. Blackwood, Alex called, his firm voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. I think it's time we had a talk. Evelyn turned, her blood running cold as she saw Alex approaching. Alex, please, not here, she whispered, glancing nervously around. But Alex didn't back down. No, the time for secrets is over. Who are you, really? Why are you so interested in my life? The people around them began to notice the tension, forming a silent circle around them. Evelyn felt the weight of all the eyes on her. Her heart pounded furiously in her chest. Alex, I am. Say it, Alex insisted, his voice trembling with emotion. Tell the truth, please. At that moment, something inside Evelyn broke. 20 years of secrets and guilt spilled over. I'm your mother, Alex, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. A collective gasp swept through the room. Alex stepped back, shocked, as if he had been punched. No, he shook his head in denial. You must be confusing me with someone else. I don't have a mother. She disappeared and I never heard from her again. You're wealthy, you have a perfect life. My father and I are poor. This doesn't make any sense. I think you might be under stress from all the events you organize. I suggest you see a doctor. Faced with Alex's disbelief, Evelyn reached out a trembling hand toward him. It's true, Alex. I'm Mariana Torres. I left you and your father 20 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, voices erupted around them. Shocked whispers and exclamations of surprise filled the air. Richard, who had been on the other side of the room, made his way through the crowd until he reached Evelyn. His face was pale with rage. What is going on here? He demanded. Evelyn, what does this mean? Evelyn turned to her husband, tears streaming down her face. Richard, I'm so sorry. I should have told you when we met, but... Told me what? Richard shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. That you have a son? That our entire marriage was built on a lie? The crowd watched in silence, like spectators at a live drama. Sophia, standing beside Alex, looked between them, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. She wanted to comfort Alex, but at the same time, she felt a wave of pity for Evelyn. Why? Alex finally managed to say, his voice broken. Why did you abandon us? Evelyn stepped toward him, desperate to explain. Alex, I was young, I was scared. Your father, things weren't good between us. I thought I was doing what was best for all of us. The best? Alex laughed bitterly. Growing up without a mother was the best? No, I made a terrible mistake, Evelyn sobbed. I wanted to come back, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. I thought you'd be better off without me. Alex shook his head, stepping back. I don't want to hear anymore. I can't deal with this right now. I don't have a mother. You're a stranger to me. Stay away from me. He turned to leave, but Evelyn called out to him again. Alex, please. Your heart condition. I have information that could help. Alex paused for a moment but didn't turn around. Send it to my doctor, he said coldly, before walking out of the hall, with Sophia running after him. Evelyn stood frozen in the middle of the hall, feeling the judgmental stares of everyone around her. Richard glared at her with a mix of anger and disgust. It's over, Evelyn, he said quietly. I want a divorce. As Richard walked away, Evelyn felt her world collapse. In a matter of minutes, she had lost everything: her son, her husband, her reputation. The voices around her blended into an indistinct hum as she struggled to breathe. Maggie, her friend, appeared by her side, holding her arm for support. Let's go, dear, she murmured. Let's get out of here. As Maggie guided her out of the hall, Evelyn could only think of Alex. She had dreamed so many times of the moment they would reunite, but she never imagined it would be like this, so public, so painful. Outside, the Palm Beach night was warm and humid. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 2 decades of secrets finally lifted from her shoulders. But with that relief came a new and terrifying reality. She would have to face the consequences of her choices, and the road ahead would be long and difficult. The lawyer's office was cold and impersonal, much like the words Richard spoke. Evelyn sat rigidly, listening to her husband detail the terms of the divorce. I want this to be quick and quiet, Richard said, his voice hard. You'll have to move out of the mansion within a week. As for the money, well, you'll have to make do with what you brought into the marriage. Evelyn felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. In a matter of days, she would go from being a respected socialite to almost homeless. Richard, please, she begged. Don't 20 years of marriage mean anything? His gaze was icy. Apparently, they didn't mean anything to you when you decided to hide a child from me all this time. You made a fool of me. You know how much I've always wanted children, but you always put up barriers and made sure I never realized my dream. Now I understand why you were already a mother and abandoned your own newborn without mercy. You left him with an alcoholic. Thankfully, he's a student and hardworking, but imagine everything he went through without his mother by his side. Meanwhile, you deceived me. Just like Alex, I'm also your victim. Evelyn remained silent, feeling a lump in her throat, and could only agree with Richard's words. When Evelyn left the office, she felt lost. Her thoughts drifted to Alex, wondering how he was coping with everything. Little did she know, at that very moment, Alex was being rushed to the hospital. The tension of the past weeks had been too much for his weakened heart. Sophia ran alongside the gurney, holding Alex's hand as the paramedics wheeled him into the emergency room. Stay with me, love, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The doctors moved quickly, diagnosing a severe heart attack. Dr. Martinez appeared, his face grave. Alex needs surgery immediately, he informed them. It's a complex and expensive procedure. Sophia's heart sank. She knew that neither she nor Alex had the resources for such a surgery. At that moment, Evelyn arrived at the hospital, out of breath and frantic. Sophia had contacted her quickly to inform her of the situation. When she saw Sophia, she rushed toward her. "How is he? What happened?" Sophia hesitated, torn between her dislike for Evelyn and the need for help for Alex. Finally, she explained the situation. Without hesitation, Evelyn turned to Dr. Martinez. "Do the surgery. I'll pay for everything." "Mrs. Blackwood," the doctor began, "the cost is—" "It doesn't matter," Evelyn interrupted him. "Do whatever it takes to save my son." In the hours that followed, Evelyn ran from one place to another. She sold all her jewelry, emptied her personal accounts, and even borrowed money from friends. All to ensure that Alex received the best possible treatment. Sophia watched all this with a mix of gratitude and distrust. Part of her wanted to accept Evelyn, to see the love and regret in her actions. But another part couldn't forget the pain she had caused Alex. "Why are you doing this?" Sophia finally asked as they waited for news of the surgery. Evelyn looked at her, her eyes filled with tears. "Because he's my son. Because I love him, even if I don't have the right to. And because I want to somehow fix the harm I've caused." Sophia slowly nodded, beginning to see Evelyn in a new light. Tears ran down her face as she stood before a mother who visibly loved her son and would do anything for him. At the same time, this mother had run from her own child for 20 years. Sophia pondered the mysteries and contradictions of life. The wait felt endless. Every passing minute was torture. Then a familiar figure appeared in the hospital corridor, David, Alex's father. Evelyn recognized him immediately, even after all these years. He looked older, of course, but there was a clarity in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was sober. David stopped when he saw Evelyn, surprise evident on his face. "Mariana," he said, using the name she had abandoned long ago. "Is it really you?" Evelyn stood up, trembling. "Hello, David. I'm so sorry for everything." David studied her for a long moment, decades of emotions passing across his face. Finally, he said, "We're here for Alex now. The rest can wait. Don't worry about me being here." He turned to Sophia, who quickly explained the situation. David listened attentively, his face a mask of concern. "My boy," he murmured. "He's strong. He'll get through this." The hours dragged on. Evelyn, Sophia, and David sat side by side, united in their concern for Alex. The past, with all its complications, seemed distant in the face of the present reality. Finally, Dr. Martinez appeared, looking exhausted but relieved. "The surgery was a success," he announced. "Alex is stable and recovering." A collective sigh of relief echoed down the hallway. Sophia began to cry with joy, David closed his eyes in silent thanks, and Evelyn felt her legs give way in relief. "When can we see him?" Sophia asked eagerly. "Soon," the doctor replied. "He needs to rest now, but you'll be able to visit him in a few hours." As Dr. Martinez walked away, Evelyn, David, and Sophia exchanged glances. The worst had passed, but they all knew the road ahead would still be difficult. Alex was alive, but the emotional wounds would take much longer to heal. David was the first to break the silence. "I think we have a lot to talk about," he said, looking at Evelyn. "For Alex." Evelyn nodded, feeling the weight of her past choices, but also a glimmer of hope for the future. For Alex, she agreed softly. The hospital room was silent, except for the steady beep of the machines. Alex, pale but recovering, stared out the window, avoiding the anxious gaze of Evelyn, who stood by the door. "Can I come in?" Evelyn asked softly. Alex shrugged, without turning around. "It's a free country." Evelyn hesitated before sitting in the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," Alex replied dryly. "Thanks to you, from what I've heard." Evelyn sighed. "Alex, I know you have every right to hate me, but dash." "I don't hate you," Alex interrupted, finally turning to look at her. "I don't want to carry that kind of anger. I just don't know how to feel. I don't know who you are. Do you think you can just show up out of nowhere and everything will be okay?" The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and lost years. Despite Alex's clear resentment, Evelyn felt a glimmer of relief inside. She had saved her son's life, and as she left the hospital, she reflected on how life works in mysterious ways. "Thank you, God, for putting me in my son's path when he needed me the most. I know I've been a terrible mother for the last 20 years, but if it's your will, I want to make amends and be different," Evelyn whispered to herself, tears in her eyes. In the weeks that followed, as Alex recovered, Evelyn sought meaning in her life. She rented a small apartment and, using what was left of her savings, began working on creating a foundation to help women who were victims of domestic violence. "It's a form of reparation," she explained to Sophia one day, as they shared coffee in the hospital cafeteria. "For all the women who didn't have the chance I had to escape." Sophia, who had initially been hesitant to spend time with Evelyn, began to see a different side of her. "It must have been hard," she commented. "Leaving everything behind and starting over." Evelyn nodded. "It was the hardest decision of my life. And the one I regret the most. Leaving David was the right thing to do at the time, but my biggest mistake was allowing so much time to pass before I came back for Alex. I was terrified of losing Richard, who was always a good man, but equally afraid of being found by David, who was violent and vindictive. Meanwhile, David, now a constant presence in Alex's life, decided it was time for an honest conversation with Evelyn. They met at a park near the hospital, a neutral place that felt appropriate for the talk they were about to have. "Why didn't you ever come back?" David asked, his voice heavy with repressed emotion. Evelyn closed her eyes, painful memories flooding back. "At first, it was fear. Fear of you, your alcoholism, your anger. Then, it was shame. The longer I stayed away, the harder it became to return." David nodded slowly. "I was a monster back then. I don't blame you for running. But Alex, he didn't deserve to grow up without a mother. And I know I was the one to blame. You wouldn't have run if I hadn't been that monster." "I know," Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "If I could go back." "But we can't," David interrupted. "What we can do is try to fix things now. For Alex." As Evelyn struggled to rebuild her relationship with Alex, an unexpected obstacle emerged. Richard, still bitter from the divorce, began making phone calls, spreading rumors about Evelyn's past. One day, Alex received a surprise visit from Richard at the hospital. "I just thought you should know the truth about your mother," Richard said, his voice dripping with venom. "I fell in love with her the moment I saw her. She was just a simple cleaning lady at my family's company. She was a lovely young woman. I had to fight my family to be with her. My parents never accepted my relationship with Evelyn. They couldn't stand the idea of their only son marrying a cleaner. But I stood up to them and married her anyway. I don't regret it because we had good times together. I know you must be feeling a lot of anger toward her. Believe me, I do too. I was betrayed for 20 years. But my relationship with her is over, and I'm leaving this town. I'm starting over somewhere far away. But you, Alex, you're Evelyn's son. I hope one day you can forgive her. I wish you luck. Goodbye. Alex listened in silence, his face an unreadable mask. When Evelyn learned about Richard's visit, she was devastated. He's trying to turn you against me, she told Alex, panicked. He must have told you lies about me. Please, don't believe him. Alex looked at her for a long moment. Richard just came to say goodbye. He's leaving town. He's starting over somewhere else. Evelyn remained silent, surprised. She had assumed Richard was trying to get revenge on her. As the days passed, a routine settled in. Sophia and David took turns caring for Alex. Evelyn visited daily, sometimes just sitting in silence, other times sharing small stories about her life. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Alex started asking questions about his past, about Evelyn's life before he was born. Evelyn, in turn, absorbed every detail Alex shared about his life, eager to fill in the gaps of the 20 years she had lost. One afternoon, as Evelyn was about to leave after a visit, Alex called her. Mariana, he said, the word sounding strange but not unpleasant. Thank you for saving my life. Evelyn's heart swelled. It was a small acknowledgement, but to her, it meant everything. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for them after all. The afternoon sun streamed through the hospital room windows, casting long shadows. Alex sat on the bed, stronger now but still pale. Evelyn occupied the chair beside him, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. You said you wanted to know everything, Evelyn began, her voice trembling. I'm ready to tell you, if you're ready to listen. Alex nodded slowly. I'm listening. Evelyn took a deep breath and began her story. She talked about her passionate relationship with David, their rushed marriage when she found out she was pregnant, and how everything quickly changed. She described the nights of fear, waiting for David to come home drunk and violent. The night I ran away, she said, tears streaming silently, your father came home furious. He broke furniture, screamed, threatened to hurt me. I feared for my life, Alex. I knew he wouldn't hurt you, but me. Alex listened, his face a mixture of shock and pain. Why didn't you ask for help? I tried, Evelyn replied. But back then, people saw domestic violence as a private matter. No one wanted to get involved. The neighbors were afraid of David too. She continued, describing how she had planned her escape for weeks, hiding money, preparing to leave. I meant to take you with me, but at the last minute, I panicked. I didn't think I could protect you on my own, with no money, no place to go. Alex closed his eyes, absorbing it all. And afterward? Why didn't you ever come back? Evelyn hung her head in shame. At first, it was fear. Fear that your father would find us. Then, I met Richard. He offered safety, stability. I thought you'd be better off without me. The silence that followed was heavy. Alex struggled to process everything, to understand the impossible choices his mother had faced. I know there's no excuse for what I did, Evelyn concluded softly. But I want you to know there wasn't a day I didn't think about you, or regret what I did. Alex didn't respond immediately, lost in his own thoughts and emotions. Later that day, Sophia found Evelyn in the hospital hallway. The two women looked at each other for a moment before Sophia spoke. "Alex told me," she said, "about what you went through." Evelyn nodded, unsure of what to say. "I can't imagine what it must have been like," Sophia continued. "Having to choose between your own safety and your child. I think I understand you a little better now." "Thank you," Evelyn replied softly. "That means a lot to me." The two women talked for a while, sharing their worries and hopes for Alex. For the first time, they saw each other not as rivals, but as allies united by their love for Alex. Meanwhile, David was dealing with his own internal struggle. Years of sobriety had forced him to confront the mistakes of his past, and the recent revelations had brought it all back to the surface. One quiet afternoon, he gathered the courage to speak with both Alex and Evelyn together. "I need you both to hear me," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "What happened to our family, a lot of it was my fault. I was a violent drunk, a terrible husband and father." He turned to Evelyn. "I'm sorry for making you feel like running was your only option. You deserve better." Then, he looked at Alex. "And you, son. I'm sorry for not being the father you deserved for so long. For being the reason you grew up without your mother." Alex and Evelyn listened in silence, both moved by David's raw honesty. "I know asking for forgiveness is sin. TNF," David continued. "But I hope the three of us can try to build something new from here." The moment of connection was abruptly interrupted when Alex suddenly paled, clutching his chest. "Alex?" Evelyn called, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "I can't breathe," Alex gasped. Within seconds, the room was filled with doctors and nurses. Evelyn, David, and Sophia were pushed into the hallway, united in their fear and worry. As they waited for news, the three of them exchanged glances, all the old hurts and resentments momentarily forgotten. In that moment, they were just a family, bound by their love for Alex and their fear of losing him. The wait felt endless, each minute dragging on like hours. Finally, Dr. Martinez came out to speak with them, his face serious but not hopeless. "Alex had a complication," he explained. "We'll need to monitor him closely over the next 24 hours. As the doctor continued explaining the situation, Evelyn, David, and Sophia instinctively drew closer, seeking comfort in one another. They knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The days following Alex's cardiac complication were an emotional roller coaster. The hospital room became an unintentional meeting point for Evelyn, David, and Sophia, who took turns caring for him. Evelyn, exhausted after another night of vigil, crossed paths with David in the hospital corridor. Their eyes met, laden with decades of unresolved history. "Can we talk?" David asked hesitantly. They made their way to the hospital cafeteria, where the smell of weak coffee hung in the air. Sitting across from each other, the silence between them was heavy. "I never thought we'd be here after everything," David began. Evelyn nodded, nervously running her fingers along the edge of her coffee cup. "Neither did I. But here we are, for Alex." "For Alex," David repeated. "Evelyn, I know I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I've been sober for years. I've changed." "I can see that," Evelyn replied softly. "And I'm happy for you, David. But what do we do now? How do we help our son?" They spent the next hour discussing, planning, sometimes disagreeing, but always with Alex in mind. When they parted ways, there was a silent understanding between them. The past was the past, and Alex's future was their priority. Meanwhile, Sophia was facing her own internal struggles. Sitting by Alex's bedside, she watched his sleeping face, her heart torn between love and fear. What if I'm not enough? She whispered to herself. What if he needs his mother more than he needs me? Alex stirred, his eyes slowly opening. Sophia, he murmured. She took his hand, forcing a smile. I'm here, love. Are you okay? Alex asked, noticing the worry in her eyes. Sophia hesitated, then decided to be honest. I'm scared, Alex. Everything is changing so fast. Alex squeezed her hand. I know. But some changes can be good, right? We're in this together. His words, though simple, eased Sophia's fears. She leaned in and kissed him gently, reassured that their love was strong enough to face any challenge. In his moments of solitude, Alex reflected on the recent events. The anger he had initially felt toward Evelyn for her absence had slowly been replaced by a reluctant understanding. The stories of abuse, fear, and impossible choices echoed in his mind. Maybe, he thought, maybe it's time to give her a chance. It was in that moment of contemplation that Evelyn's phone rang. It was Richard. Evelyn, you need to come home now, Richard's voice sounded threatening. Or I'll have to tell everyone about your past in Miami. About what really happened before we met. Evelyn's face went pale, painful memories resurfacing. Richard, please. That's in the past. Don't do this. Then come home. Last chance. Evelyn looked through the window at Alex, her heart torn between fear of the past and love for her son. With a strength she didn't know she had, she answered, No, Richard. It's over. She hung up the phone, trembling but resolute. The next morning, Dr. Martinez walked into the room with a cautious smile. Good news, Alex. You're ready to be discharged. But, he added, his tone turning serious, you'll need constant care over the next few weeks. Alex looked at Evelyn, then at Sophia and David. 3 faces, 3 different stories, all united by their love for him. I have an idea, Alex said slowly. But I need all of you to agree. He explained his plan. He would stay at Evelyn's house during his recovery. This would give him a chance to get to know her better while still having Sophia and David nearby. There was a moment of silence after his proposal. Then, one by one, they agreed. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Alex pulled Sophia into a hug. Are you sure you're okay with this? He asked gently. Sophia smiled, a genuine smile this time. I am. Because I know that at the end of the day, it's you and me. Always. Alex kissed her forehead, grateful for her love and understanding. When they left the hospital, the sun shone brightly, as if welcoming a new beginning. Evelyn, David, Sophia, and Alex walked together, an unlikely family bound by love and the hope for a better future. The road ahead would be challenging, full of difficult conversations and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, they all felt like they were heading in the right direction. One step at a time, they were not only rebuilding Alex's health, but also the bonds that connected them as a family. The sun shone brightly over Palm Beach, its warm colors lighting up the hospital room where Alex, now fully recovered, was packing his things to be discharged. Evelyn stood beside him, silently helping, still unsure of her place in her son's life. So, Alex began, breaking the silence, I've been thinking a lot about everything. Evelyn froze, her heart racing. Yes? Alex turned to face her. I can't say I understand everything or forgive it all. But I think I'd like to try. To get to know you. You're here now. That's what matters. His words washed over Evelyn like a wave of relief. "Oh, Alex," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "That's more than I could have hoped for. Thank you." At that moment, Evelyn's phone rang. It was Richard. "Evelyn," his voice was cold on the other end of the line. "I'm willing to reconsider the divorce. Come back home, leave this madness behind, and we can forget all of this." Evelyn looked at Alex, who was watching her curiously. Without hesitation, she replied, "No, Richard. My place is here, with my son. Goodbye." She hung up, feeling lighter than she had in years. The weeks that followed were filled with adjustments and discoveries. Evelyn and Alex began building a relationship, sharing stories and learning about each other as adults. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of tension and misunderstandings, but both were committed to trying. Meanwhile, preparations for Alex and Sophia's wedding were in full swing. The event, delayed due to Alex's surgery, now carried a new sense of meaning. Evelyn immersed herself in her work at the foundation, expanding its services to include not only women who were victims of domestic violence, but also families dealing with trauma and separation. Her own experiences had become a powerful tool to help others. "You're making a difference," Alex remarked one day after visiting the foundation. "It's amazing to see how you've turned your pain into something positive." Evelyn smiled, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. "Thank you, son. That means a lot coming from you." The big day finally arrived. The small chapel was decorated with white and gold flowers, the air thick with expectation and emotion. David, now a present and loving father, waited eagerly to walk Sophia down the aisle. Evelyn sat in the front row, her heart overflowing with emotions. She watched Alex at the altar, looking so handsome in his suit, his eyes shining with love as he saw Sophia enter. As the couple exchanged vows, Evelyn couldn't help but reflect on her own journey. From the shadows of fear and guilt, she had emerged into the light of forgiveness and acceptance. It wasn't perfect, there was still much to heal, but it was a start. After the ceremony, during the reception, Alex surprised everyone by calling Evelyn and David to join him for a family dance. The three moved awkwardly at first, laughing at their own lack of coordination. "Look at us," Alex joked. "The strangest family on the dance floor." David laughed. "Hey, speak for yourself. I've got some great moves." Evelyn felt tears welling up, but this time, they were tears of joy. "You two are impossible," she said, smiling. As they danced, Evelyn looked around. She saw Sophia chatting animatedly with her friends from the foundation. She saw Alex's old colleagues from the hospital, who had supported him throughout his recovery. She saw a community that had come together despite the odds. Later that night, as the guests began to say their goodbyes, Alex pulled Evelyn aside. "You know," he said softly, "I used to dream of days like this. Having my whole family at my wedding." Evelyn held his hand. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there before." "What matters is that you're here now," Alex replied. "And that we're building something new." As Alex walked away to join Sophia, Evelyn stood back, watching. Her son was happy, healthy, and loved. She had a purpose, a chance to make a difference. And while the past couldn't be changed, the future was full of possibilities. David approached, offering her a glass of champagne. "A toast," he suggested. Evelyn smiled, accepting the glass. "To new beginnings," she said. "And to imperfect families that love each other," David added. They clinked their glasses, watching as Alex and Sophia danced their last dance of the night. The love in the air was palpable, not just between the newlyweds, but among everyone present. As the soft music filled the air, Evelyn felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time in a long time, she was looking forward to the future. A future filled with love, forgiveness, and above all, hope. I hope you were moved by this story of redemption and new beginnings. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think or if you have a story suggestion. And of course, subscribe to the channel to keep following our heartwarming stories. Remember, it's never too late to start over and find hope, even in the toughest moments.